January 1982. Wind, cold as a knife's edge, prowls the streets of Des Moines, capital of Iowa. 5,000 people have gathered at Veterans Memorial Auditorium. They came to see him, the man legend, the outcast, the Prince of Darkness. Ozzy Osbourne, kicked out of Black Sabbath like spent ammunition, now stood on stage alone, proving to the world that he hadn't just survived. He had risen from the ashes. The concert was going according to plan. Randy Rhoads' guitar riffs sliced through the air like lightning in a storm-torn sky. Ozzy careened across the stage in his signature style, a half-crazed rock shaman, a conduit between the worlds of the living and the dead. The crowd roared. The energy was electric, almost tangible. This was his finest hour, a moment of triumph after disgraceful collapse. And then someone from the audience threw something strange onto the stage. Ozzy spotted a dark lump lying at his feet. Under the spotlights, it looked like a rubber toy, another gift from fans who knew his reputation as a lover of shocking the public. He had already bitten the heads off doves at record company business meetings, turning negotiations into theater of the absurd. Why not repeat the trick? Ozzy picked up the object, cold, wet, strangely heavy for rubber. The crowd froze in anticipation. They knew something incredible was about to happen. Ozzy Osbourne never disappointed. He brought it to his mouth, clenched his jaws, and the moment his teeth pierced flesh, when warm blood sprayed into his mouth, when that disgusting metallic taste filled his throat, he understood. This was not a toy. This was a live bat. The audience exploded. Some screamed with delight, others with horror. Someone fainted. Someone rushed for the exit. And Ozzy Osbourne stood on stage, holding the decapitated body of a flying mammal with blood on his lips and absolute shock in his eyes. Backstage, a team with syringes was already waiting for him. A race against time had begun. Rabies forgives no mistakes. But before plunging into the medical nightmare, Ozzy managed to think about one thing. How the hell had he lived to this moment? And how many more insanities could one human life contain? The story of Ozzy Osbourne is not just the biography of a rock star. It is the chronicle of a man who transformed self-destruction into art and survival into a superpower. December 3rd, 1948. Industrial Birmingham, England. A city where the sky is always gray with factory smoke, where the air is saturated with metal and poverty. Here, in a tiny house on Lodge Road number 14, in a working-class family, the sixth child was born. They named him John Michael Osbourne. No one then could have imagined that this frail boy would one day become the most scandalous person in rock music history. John's childhood was a nightmare of poverty. A family of 8, crammed into a 2-room apartment without hot water or central heating. His father, John Thomas Jack Osbourne, toiled at a metalworking plant, returning home with hands blackened by soot. His mother, Lillian, worked at an automobile factory, assembling electrical circuits until she lost her eyesight from strain. They barely made ends meet. John grew up a sickly child with dyslexia and attention deficit disorder. At school, he was bullied mercilessly. Classmates called him an idiot and a loser. Teachers gave up on him. At 14, he dropped out of school, barely able to read or write. His future looked predetermined, the same dead eyes, the same blackened hands, the same endless loop of home, factory, home, until death. But there was one thing that set John apart from the other boys on Aston Road: his voice. He had a voice that sounded as if it rose from the very depths of hell, guttural, powerful, mesmerizing. When John sang, even those who mocked him fell silent and listened. At 16, an event occurred that changed everything. John saw the Beatles on television. 4 guys from Liverpool, working class like him, had conquered the entire world. They proved the impossible. You could escape poverty without becoming a victim of the factory conveyor belt. You could become someone. John stole a guitar. He was arrested, tried, and sentenced to 2 months in prison or a 40-pound fine. The family couldn't pay. John served his sentence at Winson Green Prison, and those 2 months changed him forever. He emerged with a tattoo reading Ozzy on the knuckles of his left hand, a nickname given to him by school friends. John Osbourne died in that cell. Ozzy was born. The next few years, he bounced between odd jobs, killing cattle at a slaughterhouse, working as a plasterer, a loader, a mechanic. But in the evenings, he sang, in bars, on the streets, anywhere. He lived music, breathed it, bled it, and in 1968, a miracle happened. Ozzy saw an advertisement in a music shop window. Experienced frontman seeks band, must be able to sing and scream. The ad was placed by bassist Terry Geezer Butler. He was looking for a vocalist for a new band he was forming with guitarist Tony Iommi and drummer Bill Ward. These 4 guys from Aston met in a tiny rehearsal room. And when Ozzy sang, when his voice merged with Iommi's dark, crushing riffs, something dark, heavy, absolutely new was born. They called themselves Black Sabbath, borrowing the name from an Italian horror film. Their first album, recorded in just 12 hours in February 1970, became a manifesto of a new era. Critics hated them. The church declared them Satanists. Parents forbade their children to listen to their music. But youth around the world fell in love with Black Sabbath from the first note. They spoke the language of despair, rage, and pain, a language understood by millions. In 3 years, the band released 5 revolutionary albums and became one of the most influential in heavy music history. Ozzy Osbourne, the boy everyone had written off, became an icon, the Prince of Darkness, the voice of a generation. But success is a treacherous beast. It brings money, fame, adoration of crowds, and along with them, drugs, alcohol, destruction. Ozzy began drinking, at first just a little to cope with stage fright, then more, then even more. By the mid-70s, he couldn't go a day without a bottle. Cocaine became his second breakfast. The other band members began noticing changes. Ozzy canceled concerts, forgot lyrics, showed up at rehearsals blind drunk, or didn't show up at all. Tension between the musicians grew. Tony Iommi, a perfectionist and control freak, could no longer tolerate the vocalist's unpredictability. And in April 1979, the unthinkable happened. Black Sabbath fired Ozzy Osbourne. His own band, which he had created, to which he had given 10 years of his life, threw him out like garbage. The official version stated, "creative differences." The truth was simpler and harsher. Ozzy had become an unmanageable alcoholic who was dragging the band down. He returned to his parents' house on Lodge Road, 31 years old, divorced, penniless, fired from his own band. He lay in his old childhood room, staring at the ceiling, thinking about one thing. Maybe he should have stayed at the slaughterhouse. But life had a completely different script prepared for Ozzy Osbourne, and the leading role in it would be played by a woman who would transform the fallen Prince of Darkness into an immortal legend. Summer of 1979. Ozzy Osbourne sat in his childhood bedroom, surrounded by posters of long gone glory, and slowly died. Not physically, though alcohol was doing its work. He was dying inside, suffocating from shame and humiliation. A man whose voice could drive stadiums mad now couldn't force himself to get out of bed. He drank from morning till night. Whiskey, vodka, anything within reach. Alcohol washed away the pain, but couldn't wash away the truth. He had been betrayed by those he considered brothers. Black Sabbath continued without him, as if he were merely a replaceable part in a machine. They were already rehearsing with a new vocalist, Ronnie James Dio, whose voice was technically perfect but lacked that primal magic Ozzy possessed. Months dragged on like years. Ozzy gained weight, lost touch with reality, seriously considered suicide. His first wife, Thelma, took the children and filed for divorce. Nobody called. Nobody offered work. The rock music world decided that Ozzy Osbourne was a finished man. But fate had prepared an unexpected twist. In September of that same year, he was approached by Sharon Arden, daughter of legendary music manager Don Arden, a man with a reputation as the most ruthless and unprincipled dealer in the industry. Sharon worked for her father and had seen Ozzy many times during Black Sabbath tours. She remembered the charismatic frontman who could ignite any stage. And she saw potential where others saw only ruins. Their first meeting took place at Ozzy's parents' house. He opened the door in a dirty t-shirt, unshaven, with eyes swollen from hangover. Sharon saw before her a 30-year-old man who looked 50. Most people would have turned around and left, but Sharon Arden was not most people. "Stop feeling sorry for yourself," she said harshly, without sentimentality. "You have a voice that any singer on the planet would envy. You have a name that millions know, and you have me. We'll create something that will make Black Sabbath regret the day they fired you." These weren't just words. This was a challenge. Ozzy looked into her eyes, cold, calculating, absolutely confident, and for the first time in months, felt something he thought he'd lost forever: hope. Sharon became his manager, and later, the love of his life. She took on everything, finding musicians, negotiating with labels, organizing studio time. She was ruthless with those who tried to use Ozzy, and absolutely devoted to him. It was she who found 25-year-old virtuoso guitarist Randy Rhoads, whose talent was so stunning that even Tony Iommi himself acknowledged his genius. Work began immediately. Sharon literally dragged Ozzy out of the alcoholic pit, forced him to rehearse, write new material. She believed in him when he didn't believe in himself, and this faith worked miracles. In September 1980, the album Blizzard of Oz was released. Critics predicted failure. They said Ozzy without Black Sabbath was nothing, that his time had passed, that a new generation of rock musicians had left him behind. They were wrong, catastrophically wrong. Blizzard of Oz was a bomb. Songs Crazy Train and Mr. Crowley played on every radio station. The album sold 6 million copies in the U.S. alone. Ozzy Osbourne didn't just return, he rose from the dead and became even stronger than before. But success demanded sacrifices. The touring schedule was murderous. Ozzy started drinking again, now to cope with pressure and fear of huge audiences. He took cocaine by handfuls, mixed alcohol with pills, lived on the edge between genius and complete mental breakdown. And it was in this state, at the peak of fame and on the brink of madness, that he committed an act that would forever change his biography. January 1981, Los Angeles. Meeting with CBS Records representatives in a luxurious office. This was supposed to be a routine business meeting to discuss a contract. Sharon had organized everything perfectly to impress the record label. Ozzy showed up drunk. He brought with him 3 white doves in a cage, supposedly as a symbol of peace. Label representatives smiled, thinking this was another eccentric PR stunt. Cameras were ready to capture the sweet moment of releasing the birds to freedom. Ozzy released 2 doves into the office. The birds panicked and flew around the ceiling, creating chaos, and the 3rd dove Ozzy brought to his mouth and bit off its head. Blood splattered on the expensive white carpet. Women began screaming. Men froze in shock. Ozzy spat out the bird's head onto the conference table and smiled. CBS Records immediately terminated his contract. Sharon was furious. The press declared Ozzy insane. Animal rights activists demanded his arrest. It seemed his career was plummeting into the abyss again. But something amazing happened. The scandal made Ozzy even more famous. Tickets to his concerts sold out in minutes. Youth adored him precisely for that madness that horrified adults. He became the living embodiment of rebellion, chaos, absolute freedom from any rules and norms. Epic Records, a CBS subsidiary, still signed a contract with him. That same year, the 2nd album, Diary of a Madman, was released, which was even more successful than the first. Ozzy Osbourne proved the impossible. He was kicked out of Black Sabbath as a loser, and he created a solo career that eclipsed the band itself. He turned his flaws into weapons and madness into a brand. But this success would demand a terrible price. And fate presented the bill one cold January evening in Des Moines, Iowa, when a bat flew onto the stage. January 20th, 1982. Veterans Memorial Auditorium, Des Moines, Iowa. Temperature outside minus 15 Celsius. Inside, 5,000 heated bodies ready to explode with rock and roll energy. Ozzy Osbourne stood backstage, looking at the stage through a gap in the curtain. His heart pounded like mad. Not from fear. He'd long stopped fearing the stage, from anticipation. Every concert was like a drug to him, a dose of adrenaline without which he couldn't exist. The Diary of a Madman tour was going triumphantly. The 2nd album had rocketed to the top of the charts. Tickets sold out in hours. Critics finally admitted that Ozzy without Black Sabbath had become even better than with them. Randy Rhoads on guitar created magic that made audiences weep with delight. But this concert in Des Moines was to become special for an entirely different reason. Ozzy drank before going on stage. Not too much. He'd learned to control the dose so as not to collapse on stage. Enough to kill nervousness and loosen up. A bit more cocaine for energy. Standard pre-concert routine for an 80s rock star. At 9 p.m., the lights in the hall went out. The crowd roared. Tommy Aldridge's drum roll shattered the silence like a thunderclap. Then Randy's guitar, that legendary "I Don't Know" riff that became an anthem for an entire generation. Ozzy ran onto the stage. Spotlights blinded him for a moment, then his eyes adjusted. He saw a sea of faces, thousands of hands reaching toward him. He felt this wave of adoration that covered him completely. This was love in its purest, most primal form. The first 3 songs went perfectly. Ozzy was on fire. His voice sounded powerful. Movements were precise. The crowd sang along every word, turning the concert into a collective ritual of worship to the dark god of rock. After Crazy Train, Ozzy paused to drink water and catch his breath. He walked to the edge of the stage, smiling at fans in the front rows. And then he saw it. On the stage, right at his feet, lay something dark, small, the size of a fist. In the spotlight, it looked like a rubber toy, a bat with spread wings. Fans constantly threw all sorts of things onto the stage: stuffed toys, bras, notes with declarations of love, sometimes even underwear. A rubber bat fit perfectly with Ozzy's image, the Prince of Darkness, singer of death and horror. A thought flashed through Ozzy's mind. This was a perfect opportunity to entertain the audience. After the Dove incident, his reputation as a madman had only strengthened. People came to his concert not just for the music. They wanted to see a show. They wanted unpredictability. They wanted that very madness for which Ozzy was famous. He picked up the object, cold, wet, heavier than a rubber toy should be. Strange, but Ozzy was high. Adrenaline raged in his blood. Logical thinking shut down. He saw only the crowd expecting another crazy stunt. He brought the bat to his mouth. The crowd froze. 5,000 people held their breath. Even the musicians on stage stopped playing for a second, watching what would happen next. Ozzy smiled his signature devilish smile and clenched his jaws. The resistance was unexpected, not like rubber, denser, like meat. The crunch of tiny bones, an explosion of warm liquid in his mouth, the metallic taste of blood. A second of realization stretched into eternity. This was not a toy. This was a live bat. Someone from the audience, still unknown who, had brought a real animal to the concert. Maybe they found an injured bat and thought it would be a funny gift for a rock star known for shocking antics. Maybe they deliberately caught it to see what would happen. The motives remained a mystery. But the result was monstrous. Ozzy spat out the bat's head. Blood ran down his chin, and disgusting taste remained in his mouth, a mixture of blood, fur, and something inexpressibly vile. His stomach clenched. His body demanded immediate vomiting. The audience exploded. Some screamed with delight, others with horror. Girls fainted. Guys roared like at a football match. This was pure chaos, a mixture of admiration, disgust, shock, and ecstasy. Ozzy stood on stage, holding the decapitated body of the mouse in his hand, unable to believe what had just happened. Adrenaline began to subside. Reality rushed into consciousness in a cold wave. What had he done? Randy Rhoads ran up to him, grabbed his shoulder. "Ozzy, are you okay?" The guitarist saw blood on the vocalist's face and turned pale. "It was a real bat," Ozzy croaked. "Damn it, Randy, it was a live bat." The concert continued. Professionalism prevailed. The show must go on no matter what. But Ozzy sang the remaining songs mechanically, his thoughts racing in panic. Bats carry rabies. Rabies is a fatal disease. If treatment isn't started immediately, death occurs in 100% of cases. When the curtain fell, security literally dragged Ozzy backstage. Sharon was already waiting there with a doctor. She was always nearby, always foreseeing disasters before they happened. To the hospital. Immediately, the doctor said, examining the wound on Ozzy's tongue. The next few hours became a nightmare. Mercy Hospital in Des Moines, endless tests, questions from doctors who looked at the rock star like a complete idiot. And finally, the diagnosis: high risk of rabies infection. Immediate post-exposure prophylaxis required. A series of injections began. 21 shots in the abdomen. Standard rabies treatment protocol in 1982. Each injection was excruciating. Ozzy, who had endured years of drugs and alcohol, cried from pain after these injections. But physical pain was nothing compared to the moral blow. By morning, the story had spread through all news agencies. Rock star bites head off live band at concert. Headlines screamed from newspaper front pages. Television showed concert footage again and again. Animal rights activists demanded Ozzy's arrest. Politicians called for banning his performances. Church leaders declared him a servant of the devil. Sharon tried to control the damage, gave interviews, explained it was an accident, that Ozzy thought it was a toy. But nobody listened to explanations. The world needed a sensation, and it got it in full. Ozzy lay in a hotel room, undergoing treatment, thinking about one thing. He had survived poverty, expulsion from Black Sabbath, years of alcoholism and drug addiction. He had proved to everyone he could rise from his knees and become even greater than before. And now he's remembered for biting the head off a bat. But a few weeks later, when the shock passed, Ozzy realized something important. This incident, however disgusting it was, had made him immortal. Thousands of rock musicians tried to shock the public, but nobody, absolutely nobody, had gone this far. Nobody had bitten the head off a living creature in front of 5,000 people. Ozzy Osbourne became a legend not only because of his music. He became a symbol of absolute, insane, unpredictable freedom. A man who recognized no boundaries, a living embodiment of chaos. And that's exactly what the world expected from him. January 21st, 1982, Mercy Hospital, Des Moines. Ozzy Osbourne sat on a hospital bed, pants rolled down, preparing for the most painful series of injections of his life. The doctor held a syringe with rabies vaccine. The needle was thick, long, intimidating. Ozzy, who fearlessly swallowed handfuls of cocaine and liters of whiskey, felt a chill run down his spine. "This is going to hurt," the doctor warned, not hiding his irritation. He clearly wasn't a rock music fan and considered his patient a complete idiot. First shot in the right buttock. Ozzy gripped the edges of the bed and groaned. The pain was sharp, piercing, completely unlike regular injections. The liquid spread under his skin like molten lead. Second shot in the left buttock. Ozzy cursed through his teeth. "You'll have to do this every night throughout the tour," the doctor said coldly. 21 shots. If you miss even one, you could die. Rabies doesn't forgive mistakes. Ozzy looked at Sharon, who stood nearby with a stone face. Her eyes said everything. "You're an idiot, but you're my idiot, and I'll pull you through this shit." The tour continued every evening before the concert, painful shots in hospitals in different cities. Every morning, newspaper headlines with new details of the scandal. The world had gone mad. January 23rd, just 3 days after the incident, Ozzy was performing at the University of Illinois. He came onto the stage, grabbed the microphone with both hands, and collapsed. The audience froze in horror. Security rushed onto the stage. Sharon screamed, demanding a doctor. Ozzy lay unconscious, his body convulsing. The diagnosis at the local clinic was quick: serum sickness, an allergic reaction to the rabies vaccine, vomiting, joint pain, complete loss of strength. Doctors warned if he continued at this pace, his body simply wouldn't survive. But Ozzy couldn't stop. Contracts were signed, tickets sold, the show had to go on. He continued performing despite the pain, despite the side effects, despite his body literally falling apart from the shots. Meanwhile, the scandal only gained momentum. Animal rights activists took to the streets with signs reading, "Ozzy is a killer." The Wisconsin Humane Society announced they would send a representative to the rock star's next concert in Milwaukee. They feared he might blow up or slaughter a goat on stage. Church organizations across America called for banning performances by this servant of the devil. Mayors of several cities actually canceled concerts, fearing public unrest. Radio stations received thousands of calls. Some demanded they stop playing Ozzy's songs. Others defended the rock star's right to self-expression. Frank Harmon, Des Moines' chief humane officer, told the press, "Reports indicated that Osbourne stuffed the bat into his mouth during a stage performance and then sought medical treatment for rabies at 2 hospitals after the concert." The story became an international sensation. European newspapers wrote about crazy American rock. Soviet propaganda used the incident as proof of the moral decay of capitalist society. Even the conservative British press, which usually ignored rock music, devoted editorials to the incident. But the most amazing thing began afterward. Tickets to Ozzy's concerts began selling out at insane speed. Venues that were previously half empty now burst with people wanting to see that guy who bit the head off a bat. Album sales skyrocketed 300%. Diary of a Madman burst into the Billboard 200 Top 10. Fans began bringing the most incredible things to concerts: dead rats, chicken heads, frogs, snakes. Once someone threw an entire dead pig onto the stage. Ozzy later recalled, "Being on stage became like attending a butcher's convention." This was a paradox that defied all logic. An incident that should have destroyed his career instead made Ozzy the most scandalous and sought-after rock star on the planet. Critics were in shock. Moralists tore their hair out. Parents forbade their children to listen to his music, which, of course, only increased teenagers' interest. In February, 17-year-old Mark Neal, the very teenager who brought the bat to the concert, gave an interview to a local newspaper. He admitted he found a stunned bat near an elementary school, put it in the freezer, and brought it to the show. "I won't get in trouble for admitting this, will I?" he asked the journalist, suddenly realizing the scale of what he'd done. Neal explained he wanted to make a special gift for his idol. He knew about Ozzy's reputation, knew about the dove incident, thought the rock star would appreciate such a gesture. He didn't imagine the bat would be alive. The cold of the freezer had apparently just stunned the animal. Ozzy didn't blame the guy. In one interview, he said, "I'm to blame. I created this reputation. I taught fans to expect madness from me. I got what I deserved." But deep down, Ozzy was traumatized. He remembered the taste of blood, the crunch of bones, the realization that he'd killed a living creature in front of thousands of people. That moment haunted his nightmares for years. Sharon tried to control the damage, gave countless interviews, explained it was an accident, that Ozzy thought the bat was rubber. But the world didn't want to hear explanations. The world needed a legend, a myth, a story about a crazy rock star who recognizes no boundaries. And Ozzy gave the world that legend. By March 1982, when the Rabies treatment course finally ended, Ozzy Osbourne wasn't just famous. He had become an icon, a symbol of absolute freedom. Living proof that in a world where everything is regulated and predictable, there's still room for real, primal chaos. Sales of Blizzard of Oz exceeded 6 million copies worldwide, becoming Ozzy's best-selling solo album. The song Crazy Train reached number 9 on the Billboard Top Tracks chart and achieved double platinum status. But most importantly, Ozzy proved what nobody believed after his firing from Black Sabbath. He proved he could be bigger than the band, bigger than the genre, bigger than music. He became a myth, a legend, an immortal story that would be retold for decades. And all this thanks to one bat on a cold January evening in Des Moines, Iowa. The bat wasn't the first, and most horrifyingly, it wasn't the last victim in Ozzy Osbourne's catalog of madness. This man's history is a chronicle of acts that balance between brilliant PR and outright insanity. The dove of peace that knew no mercy. February 1981, a year before the bat incident. Los Angeles, CBS Records office. This was supposed to be the ceremony for signing Ozzy's first solo contract, a moment of triumphant return for the exile. Sharon had organized everything perfectly. Label representatives, journalists, cameras, everything ready for the official launch of the Prince of Darkness's new career. According to the plan, Ozzy was to release 2 white doves as a symbol of peace and new beginnings. Ozzy showed up drunk, very drunk. He pulled 2 doves from his jacket. He actually released the first one. The bird panicked and flew around the office, crashing into windows. Label executives laughed nervously, thinking this was just eccentric rock and roll theater. Then Ozzy grabbed the second dove, brought it to his mouth, and bit off its head. Blood splattered on the snow-white blouse of the record company secretary. The woman screamed. Executives froze in shock. The decapitated body of the dove Ozzy hurled onto the conference table, right on the contracts he had just signed. "I don't know if it was planned," Ozzy later admitted. "I was so drunk, I don't remember half of what happened." CBS Records immediately terminated the contract. But Epic Records, a subsidiary of the same CBS, still decided to sign him. The scandal worked as the best advertising. War with the Alamo March, 1982, just 2 months after the bat incident, San Antonio, Texas. Ozzy and Sharon were walking around the city between concerts. More precisely, Ozzy was blind drunk, and Sharon was trying to control him. They found themselves near the Alamo, Texas's sacred memorial, site of the heroic death of the fort's defenders in 1836. For Texans, this is a shrine, a symbol of courage and sacrifice. Ozzy, wearing his wife's dress, he had somehow decided his own clothes weren't good enough, approached the memorial wall and urinated on it. Police arrested him within minutes. A photograph of Ozzy in handcuffs in Sharon's green dress appeared in newspapers across the country. San Antonio city authorities banned him from performing in the city for the next 10 years. "This is one of the most shameful moments of my life," Ozzy later said. Only in 1992 did he officially apologize to the city, donate a large sum to restore the memorial, and the ban was lifted. The Butcher's Circus, the 1981 tour supporting the album Diary of a Madman, turned into a real theater of the absurd. Ozzy began throwing pieces of raw meat and animal entrails at the audience. Fans took this as a challenge. They began bringing dead animals to concerts and throwing them back onto the stage. Dead frogs, rats, cats, chickens. The stage turned into a slaughterhouse. Being on stage became like attending a butcher's convention, Ozzy recalled. Once, an entire dead pig flew onto the stage. Another time, someone threw a cow's head. Ozzy Osbourne's concerts became places where the boundaries between art and madness completely dissolved. The Ant Line, the 80s, joint tour with Motley Crue, a band that itself was famous for wild lifestyle. Bassist Nikki Sixx recalled a moment that shocked even them. People who had seen everything. Ozzy saw a line of ants crawling across the dressing room floor. He took out a straw, bent down, and began snorting ants like cocaine. "We looked at him and couldn't believe our eyes," Sixx said. "We thought we'd seen everything, but this was beyond the pale." Attempted murder of his wife, September 1989. The Osbournes' home in Los Angeles. Ozzy was at the peak of alcohol and drug addiction. He hadn't slept for several days, in a state of psychosis. Sharon woke up in the middle of the night and saw her husband standing over her. In one hand, he had a knife. In the other, something else she couldn't make out in the darkness. "Today will settle everything once and for all," Ozzy croaked. He lunged at her, trying to strangle her. Sharon screamed, fought back, tried to reach the person she loved, who was hiding somewhere beneath layers of drugs and alcohol. Neighbors called the police. Ozzy was arrested right in the house. Sharon later found him under the piano. He sat there with a shotgun in one hand and a knife in the other, not understanding what had happened. He was sent for forced treatment. Sharon could have filed for divorce, could have put him in prison. Instead, she waited until he sobered up and helped him through rehabilitation. "I don't justify what I did," Ozzy later said. "I was a monster. Drugs turned me into someone I never was. Sharon saved my life by forgiving me." Accusation of driving to suicide. 1986. 19-year-old teenager John McCollum shot himself while listening to Ozzy's song Suicide Solution. His parents sued the rock star, accusing him of the song containing hidden messages pushing toward suicide. The case received enormous resonance. Religious organizations demanded banning Ozzy's music. Politicians used the tragedy to attack rock culture. Ozzy faced prison and complete financial ruin. Lawyers proved there were no hidden messages in the song. Moreover, the song's lyrics were about the destructive influence of alcoholism. Suicide solution meant suicidal decision to drink. It was a warning song, not a call to suicide. The court acquitted Ozzy, but the trauma remained. "I never wanted my music to cause pain," he said. "This was one of the hardest trials of my life." The Ozzy paradox. All these stories aren't just a collection of scandals. This is a portrait of a man who lived on the absolute edge of human possibility. Each of his acts was a scream. "I'm alive, I exist, I don't obey your rules." But behind this rebellion hid deep pain. A boy from Birmingham slums whom everyone considered an idiot spent his whole life proving to the world he was worthy of attention. And the only way he knew: shock, provoke, destroy boundaries. "I'm not proud of most of what I did," Ozzy admitted in interviews. "I was a lost person trying to fill the emptiness inside with alcohol, drugs, and crazy acts." But precisely these acts made him a legend. Millions of people saw in Ozzy a symbol of absolute freedom, a person who isn't afraid to be himself, however mad that himself might be. And most amazing, despite everything, drugs, alcohol, years of self-destruction, Ozzy Osbourne survived. More than that, he thrived. As if the universe itself decided the world wasn't ready to lose the Prince of Darkness yet. But the secret of this survival wasn't just luck or fate. It was hidden in Ozzy's genetic code itself, a discovery that astonished scientists worldwide. 2010. Ozzy Osbourne, a 62-year-old rock and roll veteran, sat in a doctor's office listening to what sounded like science fiction. "You're a medical phenomenon, Ozzy," said a geneticist from Nome, a company specializing in decoding the human genome. "You drank and used drugs for 40 years, broke your neck on a quad bike, lay in a coma twice, emerged unscathed from a bus collision with a plane. By all laws of medicine, you should have died 20 years ago, but you're alive. Moreover, you're healthy. We want to understand why." Ozzy agreed to the study out of curiosity. Scientists took samples of his DNA and began the most detailed analysis of a rock star's genome in medical history. What they discovered overturned understanding of the genetic limits of human endurance. Early years, factory of destruction. To understand the scale of Ozzy's survival miracle, we need to remember what he did to his body for decades. At 14, he started drinking alcohol. At first a little, like all teenagers, then more and more. By the mid-70s, at the peak of Black Sabbath's fame, Ozzy was drinking 4 bottles of cognac a day. 4 bottles every day. This isn't a typo, this isn't an exaggeration. 4 bottles of hard alcohol, a dose that would kill a normal person in a week. Ozzy drank like this for years. Black Sabbath colleagues recalled Osbourne rarely left home sober and preferred to work in a virtually inadequate state. This wasn't just alcoholism. This was self-destruction on an industrial scale. Cocaine was added to the alcohol. Handfuls of white powder every day. Ozzy didn't just snort cocaine, he consumed it in quantities that would lead to instant cardiac arrest in any normal person. He mixed cocaine with alcohol, a combination that creates coke ethylene in the body, a substance several times more toxic than each component separately. Then came pills, antidepressants, tranquilizers, sleeping pills, everything mixed into one chemical cocktail that constantly circulated in his blood. We were really high, using a lot of drugs. We'd come to sessions and then be forced to leave because we were too stoned. We had to stop working, Ozzy recalled about recording a Black Sabbath album. In 1979, the band fired him precisely because of drugs and alcohol. Colleagues could no longer tolerate his unpredictability. I got 96,000 pounds for my share in the brand, so I just locked myself away and spent 3 months using cocaine and booze, Ozzy admitted. 3 months of continuous binge drinking and drug marathon. Any other person would have fallen into a coma or died. Ozzy just kept living. Solo career, doubling down. When his solo career began, Ozzy didn't stop. On the contrary, he accelerated. Tours, studio work, endless pressure, all washed down with alcohol and chased with drugs. There were overdoses, many overdoses. There were moments when medics shook their heads, not understanding how his heart was still beating. In the 80s, physical injuries were added to chemical abuse. In 1982, a plane crashed into the tour bus Ozzy was in. People died. Ozzy survived with minimal injuries. Later, he fell off quad bikes several times, breaking bones including cervical vertebrae. After one such fall, doctors said he might be paralyzed. Ozzy recovered completely. Twice he lay in a coma. Twice he emerged without serious consequences. This was beyond any logic, beyond medical science, beyond what was considered possible for the human organism. Genetic anomaly. And in 2010, scientists finally got the answer. Ozzy Osbourne's genome contained several unique genetic mutations that explained his superhuman endurance. These weren't just random deviations. These were specific changes in genes responsible for alcohol metabolism, drug processing, and body recovery after damage. Ozzy had mutations in genes controlling how the liver breaks down alcohol. His liver worked several times more efficiently than a normal person's, converting toxins into harmless substances at incredible speed. Even more surprising were mutations in genes linked to addiction. In most people, certain genes make them more susceptible to forming dependencies on drugs and alcohol. In Ozzy, these genes were altered so his body could tolerate huge doses of substances without developing the degree of physical dependence that would kill others. Geneticists also discovered mutations linked to the Neanderthal genome, ancient DNA segments that gave survival advantages in extreme conditions. These segments are usually inactive in modern humans. In Ozzy, they worked at full capacity. We've never seen such a combination of genetic variants before, researchers said. It's as if nature specifically created a person capable of withstanding what would kill anyone else. Price of immortality. But genetic advantage didn't mean absence of consequences. By 2010, Ozzy suffered from chronic insomnia, nervous breakdowns, serious vision problems. Mental disorders haunted him, requiring constant treatment. His hands trembled. Memory began to fail. In 2003, after the end of reality show The Osbournes, which made him a television star, Ozzy relapsed. Depression from life before cameras plunged him back into alcohol. But this time, something changed. For the first time in decades, Ozzy realized he wanted to live, really live, not just exist in a chemical fog. He went through rehabilitation, real, serious, painful rehabilitation. And since 2003, Ozzy Osbourne the man who poisoned himself with everything he could get his hands on for 40 years, completely quit. 25 years without alcohol, 25 years without drugs, 25 years of sobriety. I no longer drink alcohol, don't smoke tobacco, don't use drugs, Ozzy said in a 2018 interview. I'm doing well now, and I think, why did I think going to bars, getting drunk, and taking all that cocaine was fun? I concluded that if right now I were offered a choice between a gun, a bag of cocaine, and a gallon of booze, I'd take the gun. It's not worth it. These were the words not just of a sober man. These were the words of a man who went through hell and came back to tell about it. Tragic finale. But even unique genetics has its limits. In 2020, Ozzy was diagnosed with Parkinson's disease, a progressive neurodegenerative condition that slowly destroys the nervous system. Years of abuse, despite all genetic advantages, still left their mark. On July 22, 2025, Ozzy Osbourne died at age 76. His last concert in his native Birmingham, he performed without getting up from a chair. His body no longer obeyed, but his voice still sounded. Doctors said that without drinking and drugs, Ozzy could have lived many more years. But those 40 years of chemical violence against his own body inflicted damage that even his unique genetics couldn't fully compensate. And yet, 76 years. For a man who should have died at 30, this was a miracle. For a man who drank 4 bottles of cognac a day, this was impossible. For a man who bit heads off animals, fell off quad bikes, survived overdoses and plane crashes, this was a triumph of life over death. Ozzy Osbourne proved that sometimes the genetic lottery creates people capable of surviving what would kill an army. But he proved something else. Even the most perfect genetics doesn't give the right to destroy yourself with impunity for decades. The Prince of Darkness died. But the legend of a man who challenged death itself and won, at least for a time, will live forever. 2002. Ozzy Osbourne, a 53-year-old rock and roll veteran, stood on the threshold of an incredible transformation. The man who bit heads off bats, urinated on historical monuments, and tried to kill his own wife was about to become a family man on television for millions of viewers. When MTV proposed filming a reality show about the Osbourne family's life, most people in the entertainment industry thought they were crazy. The Prince of Darkness in a family sitcom? It sounded like the most insane idea since the bat incident, but Sharon, as always, saw what others didn't. She understood. The world was tired of perfectly airbrushed celebrity families with their fake smiles. People wanted truth, chaos, reality in all its unsightly beauty. And the Osbourne family could give them that in abundance. On March 5th, 2002, the first episode of The Osbournes aired on MTV, and the world went crazy. Viewers saw what nobody expected. Ozzy Osbourne, legendary madman of rock music, turned out to be an ordinary family man who couldn't figure out the TV remote, argued with teenage children, and cleaned up after his numerous dogs. Sharon, where's the fucking remote? His voice, familiar to millions of fans from epic rock ballads, now sounded in a completely different setting. Ozzy tangled in dog leashes, Ozzy trying to master a cell phone, Ozzy complaining about neighbors and their noisy parties. It was genius absolute, brilliant marketing genius. The phenomenon of the Osbournes. The show became an instant hit. By the end of the first season, nearly 6 million people were watching per episode, a record audience for MTV. The Osbournes surpassed all reality shows of the time, including Survivor and The Real World. Critics were delighted. The Emmy Awards nominated the show in several categories. In 2002, it won the award for Best Reality Show. The Osbourne family became a cultural phenomenon everyone talked about, from teenagers to housewives, from rockers to sociology professors. What made the show so successful? First, this was a real family with real problems. Daughter Kelly struggled with weight and teenage insecurity. Son Jack searched for himself and experimented with drugs. Sharon managed all this chaos with an iron hand while simultaneously handling her management career and a colon cancer diagnosis she received during filming. And at the center of it all was Ozzy, confused, funny, touching. Viewers saw the person behind the Prince of Darkness mask. They saw a father who genuinely loves his children, even if he doesn't always understand what they're doing. A husband who, after 30 years of marriage, still worships his wife. "I love you more than life, Sharon," Ozzy said in one episode, and millions of viewers cried. This wasn't a rock devil. This was an ordinary person with an extraordinary fate. Price of fame. But success had a dark side. Cameras filmed everything, every argument, every breakdown, every moment of weakness. The Osbourne family's life turned into a commodity sold to millions of viewers worldwide. Jack and Kelly, who were only 16 and 17 when the show started, grew up before cameras. Their mistakes, their romances, their experiments with alcohol and drugs, everything became public property. For Ozzy, the constant presence of cameras became a new form of pressure. He had to be himself 24 hours a day. But who was he really? A crazy rocker? A caring father? A confused elderly man trying to figure out the modern world. By the end of the second season, Ozzy began breaking down. Pressure, stress, constant invasion of privacy all pushed him back to old habits. He started drinking again. In 2003, after the end of the third season, Ozzy entered a rehabilitation clinic. Depression covered him like a dark wave. He felt like a circus animal performing for crowd entertainment. Rebirth through pain. But this crisis became a turning point. In the clinic, away from cameras and crowds, Ozzy faced himself for the first time in decades. Not the Prince of Darkness image, not the reality show character. John Michael Osbourne, the boy from Birmingham who spent his whole life seeking love and recognition. He went through months of therapy, dealing with childhood traumas, years of self-destruction, guilt over all the crazy acts. It was painful, excruciating, but necessary. "I realized I don't want to die a drunk idiot," Ozzy later said. "I want to live the rest of my life as a sober, conscious person who can truly love his family." He left the clinic a different person. Since 2003, Ozzy Osbourne hasn't drunk a drop of alcohol, not a gram of drugs. This was a new Ozzy, sober, conscious, but without losing his uniqueness. The fourth season of The Osbournes came out in 2005 and was the last. The family decided to close the show before it destroyed them completely. They proved to the world it's possible to be open, honest, real, and still preserve your personal life. The show's legacy. The Osbournes changed television forever. It opened the era of family reality shows. After it came Keeping Up with the Kardashians' Duck Dynasty, hundreds of other programs about real families. But most importantly, it changed perception of Ozzy Osbourne. He stopped being just a scandalous rocker. He became a pop culture icon, recognizable and loved by several generations. Children who never heard Black Sabbath knew that funny guy from TV. This was rebirth in the truest sense. Ozzy, whom everyone wrote off after being fired from Black Sabbath, who became a laughingstock after the Bat incident, now became America's darling. But life had one more trial prepared for him. The most serious one that couldn't be defeated by music, charisma, or even unique genetics. Childhood leaves scars that never fully heal, and John Michael Osbourne from Birmingham had more of these scars than most people. At 11, he was regularly raped by 2 adult men. The boy didn't dare tell his parents. They were too busy surviving, endlessly fighting for a piece of bread. Dishes constantly broke in the house. Arguments about money never stopped. Every member of the Osbourne family survived alone. "I was a very nervous child," Ozzy later recalled. "I was constantly haunted by fear of imminent death. I was sure that if I stepped on cracks in the pavement on the way home, my mother would die." These childhood traumas became demons that haunted him all his life. They whispered in his ears during binges. They screamed in moments of depression. They demanded blood, and Ozzy gave it to them, destroying himself day after day, year after year. Voices in his head, the 70s, peak of Black Sabbath fame. Ozzy lived in a state of constant chemical intoxication. On LSD, he talked in a field for an hour with a horse. He often heard insistent voices in his head, whispering for him to do crazy things. He wore a cross on a chain, a devout Christian who regularly attended church. But he could also pull his shirt aside for photographers to show a tattoo, a blue demon head with 6 fangs. Ozzy lived on the border between light and darkness, between faith and despair, between life and death. "The only black magic we use is a box of chocolates," he joked, disclaiming accusations of Satanism. But the truth was more complex. Ozzy didn't worship the devil. He fought his own demons and lost that battle every day. When the band moved to Los Angeles, Osbourne began his Stephen King period of writing Cujo. He went so deep into drugs that he began confusing reality with hallucinations. Hotel destructions became routine. Reality dissolved in a chemical fog. And then his father died of cancer, and Ozzy fell into depression so deep it was worse than death. "The only thing I learned about myself over many years is that I can't cope with people's deaths," he admitted. "It's not that I'm afraid of it. I know everyone eventually leaves, but I can't stop thinking that there are 1 or 2 entrances to this world, but a fucking infinite number of exits." Randy's death, point of no return, March 19th, 1982, became the day that broke Ozzy completely. Randy Rhoads, 25-year-old virtuoso guitarist, friend, brother, and spirit, died in a plane crash. The plane crashed right into the tour bus where Ozzy was. A loud explosion woke me. I immediately thought we'd crashed into a car on the road. I jumped out of bed and shouted to Sharon, "Get out of the bus!" Outside, I saw the plane had crashed. I didn't know who was in it, Osbourne recalled in sworn testimony. When he learned Randy was on the plane, something inside him broke forever. This wasn't just a musician in his band. This was a person who believed in him when no one else did, who helped him rise from the ashes after expulsion from Black Sabbath. The tragedy triggered the self-destruction mechanism at full power. Ozzy drank, took drugs, committed crazy acts, anything to drown the pain tearing him apart from within. Snorted a column of ants, licked his own urine and a friend's urine off the floor. In Sharon's dress, urinated on the Alamo Military Memorial. Every act was a cry of despair, an attempt to feel anything besides emptiness. The night he almost became a murderer, September 1989, the darkest night in Ozzy Osbourne's life. He hadn't slept for several days in a state of psychosis induced by alcohol and drugs. The demons that were always nearby now took complete control. Ozzy was no longer himself. He was a puppet in the hands of his own madness. Sharon woke up and saw her husband standing over her. Literally, Ozzy tried to strangle her. The woman who saved him from suicide after being fired from Black Sabbath, who built his solo career, who bore him 3 children, who loved him despite everything. Neighbors called the police. Ozzy was arrested. Sharon sued him. He faced prison for attempted murder. This was the end. Absolute rock bottom. A place below which one couldn't fall. Long road up. But sometimes you need to touch the very bottom to push off and surface. Ozzy underwent forced treatment. Months of therapy, trauma processing, fighting addiction. It was excruciating, more painful than any physical pain, but necessary. Sharon forgave him, not immediately, not easily, but forgave. She saw the person she loved beneath all the layers of drugs and alcohol, and she decided to give him one last chance. Since 2003, Ozzy Osbourne has been completely sober. Over 20 years without alcohol. Over 20 years without drugs. This was a victory nobody expected. I no longer drink alcohol, don't smoke tobacco, don't use drugs, he said. I concluded that if right now I were offered a choice between a gun, a bag of cocaine, and a gallon of booze, I'd take the gun. It's not worth it. Purification from drugs breathed new life into Ozzy. He became more humble, calm. Still with thick hair, in round dark glasses, he remained a living heavy metal legend. But now, this was a legend who defeated his demons. Ozzy managed to give his demons a peaceful outlet, with irony and terrible grimaces depicting werewolves, mad scientists, and sorcerers to music. He turned his pain into art, his madness into creativity, his traumas into songs that helped millions cope with their own demons. He appeared in several films, always playing himself or a parody of himself. In horror Trick or Treat, he played a religious televangelist. In comedy Little Nicky, he played himself biting the head off a bat. He appeared in the Ghostbusters remake and Austin Powers. You know, it used to upset me that people didn't understand me, but then I made a career out of it. Sometimes I even overact because that's what people expect from me, Ozzy admitted. He learned to live with his demons, not defeat them. That's impossible. But control them, tame them, turn them into something constructive. Fates final blow. But life had one more blow prepared. In 2020, Ozzy was diagnosed with Parkinson's disease, a progressive neurodegenerative condition. Years of abuse, despite unique genetics, still left their mark. His body began failing. Hands trembled more. Walking became increasingly difficult. His voice, that legendary voice that drove stadiums mad, began weakening. In the early 2000s, Ozzy survived falling off a quad bike, nearly losing his arm, breaking 8 ribs and a cervical vertebra. Doctors inserted a metal plate. He survived again. But Parkinson's was an enemy that couldn't be defeated by willpower or unique genetics. This was a slow, relentless battle that could only be delayed, not won. And yet, Ozzy continued fighting until the very end, because that's the only thing he knew how to do: fight demons, whatever they were. I would like to be remembered for my work with Black Sabbath. I'm so proud of that music. But honestly, just being remembered would be an achievement for me, he said shortly before death. On July 22, 2025, the Prince of Darkness lost his final battle, but he didn't surrender. He fought to the end, like a true warrior, and the world will remember him not only for crazy acts and scandals, but also for the incredible strength of spirit of a man who survived childhood hell, decades of self-destruction, loss of loved ones, attempted murder, illness, and still found the strength to stand up and continue living. Ozzy Osbourne proved demons can be defeated, not once and for all, but every day, one battle at a time. July 22, 2025, the world froze. News spread at the speed of light through social media, messengers, news feeds. Ozzy Osbourne is dead. But there was something incredibly strange about this phrase. A man who should have died at 30 from an overdose, who survived 4 bottles of cognac a day, who bit heads off animals, fell off quad bikes, survived plane crashes, lay in a coma twice. This man finally died, 76 years. For a rock star of his generation, this was an entire eternity. It is with deep sorrow that we announce that John Michael Ozzy Osbourne peacefully passed away today, surrounded by his family, read the official family statement. The cause of death wasn't specified, but everyone knew Parkinson's disease, diagnosed in 2003 but made public only in 2020, had finally claimed him. The last show, but Ozzy Osbourne wouldn't be himself if he left quietly. Several weeks before his death, he gave his last show in his native Birmingham, the city where it all began. A man who could no longer stand, who barely controlled his body, came onto the stage in a chair, not a wheelchair, a throne, dark, majestic, as befits the Prince of Darkness. He was essentially paralyzed below the waist. But his voice, that legendary, unique voice, still sounded. The stadium roared. 20,000 people sang with him Paranoid, Iron Man, Crazy Train. Tears flowed down faces of people who understood this was goodbye. "Thank you for being with me on this crazy journey," Ozzy said at the end of the concert. "I love you all. See you on the other side." These were his last words from the stage. Words that shocked the world because everyone understood their meaning. 3 weeks later, he was gone. The world says goodbye to a legend. The reaction was instantaneous and overwhelming. Elton John called Ozzy a true legend and one of the funniest people he ever met. Paul McCartney wrote, The world lost not just a great musician, but an entire era. Tony Iommi, Black Sabbath guitarist, the man who once fired Ozzy from the band, published a long emotional statement. "I lost a brother. Together, we created something that changed music forever. Without Ozzy, there would be no Black Sabbath. Without Ozzy, there would be no heavy metal. Forgive me, friend, for everything. Metallica, Slayer, Iron Maiden, Judas Priest, all metal giants published memorial posts. Musicians worldwide lowered flags, canceled concerts, dedicated songs to the man who created their genre. But the most touching were words from ordinary people. Millions of social media posts from fans who told how Ozzy's music saved them from depression, helped them survive loss of loved ones, gave them strength to live on. A legacy that won't die. When we look back at the life of John Michael Osbourne, we see not just a rock star biography. We see an epic saga that surpasses any Hollywood film in a drama. A boy from Birmingham's slums who was raped as a child, who was considered mentally disabled due to dyslexia, who stole, sat in prison, had no chance of success. This boy changed the planet's culture. He created heavy metal. Without Black Sabbath, there would be no Metallica, no Iron Maiden, no thousands of other bands. That dark, heavy sound, born in Birmingham in 1968, became the foundation of an entire musical movement. He wrote anthems for an entire era: Paranoid, Iron Man, War Pigs, Crazy Train, Mr. Crowley. These songs will sound for hundreds more years. They became part of world culture, a language in which millions express their rebellion, their pain, their disagreement with the world. He created the image of a rock star beyond morality. Before Ozzy, there were eccentric musicians. But nobody went this far. Nobody turned their self-destruction into art, their madness into a brand. He showed you could be absolutely amoral on stage and still a loving family man at home. He proved return is possible. He was fired from Black Sabbath as a loser. He created a solo career that eclipsed the band itself. He was considered a finished alcoholic. He quit at 55 and lived sober for 22 years. Every time the world buried him, Ozzy resurrected. He became a symbol of survival. In 2010, scientists sequenced his genome, trying to understand how his body withstood decades of abuse. Results showed several rare genetic variations that gave him superhuman resilience. He was literally born to survive. Official recognition found him too. 5 Grammy Awards. Induction into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame twice, with Black Sabbath and as a solo artist. A star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame. A star on the Walk of Fame in his native Birmingham. He sold over 100 million albums worldwide. His concerts filled stadiums. His reality show was watched by millions. He became part of pop culture, a recognizable face for several generations. The man behind the mask, but Ozzy's main legacy isn't in awards or sales. The main thing is that he showed the world you can be an outsider, an oddball, a person with dyslexia whom everyone wrote off, and still change the world. You can go through all circles of hell: childhood traumas, drugs, alcohol, attempted murder of your wife, loss of friends, and come out the other side alive, conscious, loving. He was honest to the point of pain, never pretended to be a saint, admitted every sin, every mistake. "I'm not proud of most of what I did," he said again and again. But precisely this honesty made him human, understandable, close to millions. For one generation, he was the Prince of Darkness, frightening, shocking, challenging all norms. For another, a funny family man from a reality show. For a third, a symbol of resilience, a man who defeated all his demons. They're all right, because Ozzy Osbourne was all of this simultaneously. He was complex, contradictory, real. Last words once, reflecting on his inevitable departure, Ozzy, with his characteristic self-irony, said what inscription he'd like to see on his tombstone. This phrase perhaps best summarizes his long, exhausting, and incredible journey. Here lies Ozzy Osbourne. He finally managed to fall asleep. A man who suffered from insomnia all his life, who fought demons every night, who knew no peace for a second, finally found it. But for everyone else, Ozzy Osbourne will never die. His voice will sound from stages. His songs will be sung by new generations of rebels. His story will inspire those who think they have no chance. His madness will remind us that life is too short to live it by the rules. He became more than a man. He became a myth, a legend, a symbol of an entire era when rock and roll wasn't just music, but a way of life, a philosophy, a rebellion against the boredom and grayness of the world. John Michael Osbourne from Birmingham is dead. But Ozzy Osbourne, the Prince of Darkness, the godfather of heavy metal, is immortal. And as long as somewhere in the world someone turns on Paranoid at full volume, as long as someone shouts, "All aboard," before the guitar riff of Crazy Train, as long as even one person finds strength to live on in his music, Ozzy is alive. He survived the unthinkable, and he will live forever.